You're listening to Accounted For, the Canadian podcast that explores the intangibles of every career. I'm your host, Daniel Lee. Hey everyone, welcome back to Accounted For. This is a podcast to inspire unconventional careers and is a part of OMD Ventures, my platform on a mission to create utopias. If you'd like to ask questions, please reach out in the contact page, as I'm always looking to get enough questions to do an AMA episode. And if you'd like to stay up to date with my journey, I write about it actually in pretty big detail nowadays in my weekly newsletter. So don't fall behind. Subscribe to the newsletter to stay in the loop with what I'm doing, just with growing the platform as well as my own life. And I also definitely share the weekly learnings, essays, podcasts, etc. All of it can be found at omdventures.com, or I think I'll also have the links in the descriptions as well. Cool. And today's podcast is a little late, and I apologize for that. The trick with doing interviews with guests is that sometimes the timings just don't go exactly as you planned. So please forgive me. And another difference with today's podcast is that it is a semi-anonymous podcast. I say semi or semi, however you want to pronounce it, because the guest wanted to keep his identity open in case people had follow-up questions for him. But we still want to keep it somewhat anonymous in terms of the specific company names. And yeah, we don't want that. He didn't want to divulge too much information that he could be identified. Either way, we tried our best to have a candid conversation while leaving the room open for maybe future contact between you, my listeners, and my guest as well, so that he can help you out on your own journey. So, my guest today is Vince. We, as I said, semi-anonymous. We revealed just the first name. So, Vince and we explored his journey from the world of Big Four audit, aka accounting, to transitioning to be a software developer by going through a bootcamp in Toronto. In our conversation, we go through his process of making the jump, why he decided to do bootcamp versus self-teaching, and the assumptions versus the reality of bootcamps, the surprises that he faced when transitioning from everything from the job market to the learnings he got out of the bootcamp process, as well as like learnings he had of himself personally as he was making the transition into a completely different role, and what his life is like now after accounting. So these are the kind of topics that we cover in today's conversation and much more. And it really was a fun conversation where we try to get really real on what his life is like and what it's kind of like to live out his dream life as a software developer. So please enjoy my conversation with Vince. Hey everyone, welcome back to Accounted For. Today was supposed to be an anonymous podcast, but the guest is so brave that he has said, just use my first name and will not stay anonymous. So that's pretty cool. It saves me some editing time on the voice too. So today's guest is Vince. Hey Vince, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hey.
I will hide your last name just so you have a slightly more anonymity. But what helps with this is that I've had some listeners reach out. Some of you, my listeners, you've reached out and ask questions for the anonymous guest, and I can understand why, because these anonymous podcasts tend to be very candid in the answers people give, and people get more curious. But it also makes it a little more difficult because the people want to stay anonymous, and I can't really go, "Oh, can you answer these questions?" But this has made it easier. So you listeners, if you want to reach out and ask Vince questions, feel free to do that through me. That's awesome. So Vince, today's story is going to be about your kind of journey from accounting to now becoming a software engineer. And for the guests to get some perspective, how many years, how many years have you been in software engineering, and how many years were you in accounting before that?
So I can start off with accounting. I was in accounting for approximately 3 3.5 years before I decided to make a jump over into software engineering. And so I've been in a full-time role in a software engineering position for about 4 to 5 months now.
All right. So still kind of fresh off the boat in that aspect.
Still very fresh.
Yeah.
Still
but
learning lots.
I think my experience has been that the honeymoon period kind of ends after 3 months. Has it ended for you, or do you still feel like you're in it?
I still feel like I'm in it. Every day is something new. You're always just picking up new things I've learned in my journey into software engineering have basically just been like a small speck of everything I've learned up until this point in my full-time position. So one of the things that like my seniors now tell me is that once you join this profession or join this industry, you're signing up for a lifetime of learning. So we're never gonna stop learning.
So are you saying that when you joined accounting that you didn't sign up for a lifetime of learning?
Correct.
Ooh, I love it already. So, so I think the 3.5 years. When you left your Big Four accounting profession, you would have been a senior, right? A senior accountant.
I was a senior for a year already, so I would have been in my second year senior before I left.
Gotcha. Yeah, and for some of the listeners who are not familiar with the Big Four progression, it's I think universally the same country, regardless of country and stuff. I think you're like a staff/associate for 2 years, and then senior for about the next 2 to 3 years, and then manager after that. For you though, so then from leaving as a senior, like it's common for a lot of my friends to leave during the senior years because that's when you get the quote unquote certification. Like you paid your 3-year due as an auditor, and you got your CA, now CPA letters, and people mostly go into being a controller and stuff. What was the process like for you to just kind of quit cold turkey the finance profession that you've worked so hard? You got your letters, right? Yeah. So you got your letters and you just kind of quit all that and went to Bootcamp. So what was that kind of early decision process like? Can you walk me through that?
Yeah. It's something that I still kind of have in the back of my mind, even till now, that I have taken something that I've worked very hard towards, and then just left it behind for something completely different. But I've always had this want or like this desire to go from accounting into software development. Even since like undergrad, like around second year, I've always even contemplated that. I've done my electives throughout undergrad in computer science. And so because I know that I wanted to do this, I kind of planned for myself to, once I get my designation, like my letters, finish all my hours, and write the exam, pass the exams and stuff like that, that I would get out of this. Because I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy accounting. I didn't enjoy auditing, and I didn't enjoy tax and stuff like that for working full time in it. And I couldn't see myself in a like future position, even if it's higher up, even if it kind of makes like more money or like potentially more money or whatever. Money isn't the driving force behind it. So in that sense, it made it easier for me to just, I need to do this. I want to do this. I know I wanted to do this. I know I enjoy this very much. And I just took the leap of faith. I guess one of the biggest, you can call it an ultimatum almost, is that after I got my designation, I like you alluded to, that I applied for a bootcamp. There's plenty of coding bootcamps around, some in the States. There's a lot in Toronto now. If I were to get into the one that I wanted to get into, then I would go through with this all the way and not look back.
Oh, so you gave yourself that ultimatum before applying.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
So if I didn't get in, then I probably wouldn't have gone through with it. But fortunately, I guess the stars aligned, and I got in, and then I just looked forward from then on.
Gotcha. And how did that kind of conversation go with your friends, your family? Were they all very supportive of it?
With friends, they were very supportive with it because they've heard me just complaining about not being in the field itself since second year. So, so I'm happy that my friends were very supportive about it. But with family, it was a bit tougher. A lot of them were like, I've even like till now, sometimes I hear like, wait, you jumped from accounting into computer science? Why? Why would you do that? And stuff like that. And the parents initially, they also thought the same thing. They're like, because some background first. My dad is an IT consultant, so he's kind of aware of the industry and these kind of things. So one of the reasons why I didn't even go into CS in the first place and like applying to computer science and stuff in out of high school was because he was in that field, and they originally told me that like, hey, this industry is actually very competitive, and like maybe you should go for a more stable thing. The Asian parent mindset that you got to go do either be a lawyer or like a doctor or an accountant or whatever. So I guess they weren't the most supportive at first, but then they realized that, hey, like I did what I set out to do. I got my CPA, I got my designation, I finished everything I wanted to accomplish with the whole accounting route, and then if I wanted to try something new, then now is the time to do it. I don't have any fiscal or financial responsibilities, like what you'd have if you had kids and stuff like that, right? So yeah, like try when you're younger, explore the world. That you have lots of time left still, so they became more supportive about it. So I think that's what I'm very grateful for both like my friends and my family.
Like I can't stress enough how valuable the support of the support of your loved ones is really. Like the fact that I've been able to go on my journey, it's all thanks to them as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you also said that you knew kind of in your heart that software developing was kind of the thing that you wanted to do ever since like second year. Did you consider switching programs? Or did you consider somehow going into software developing like faster? Because you didn't do that, and then you spent 3 years in accounting and you graduated in accounting, so could have saved up about like 5.5 years there.
Probably, yeah. If I paid attention to first year like economics and considered sunk costs as a sunk cost and not like I need to whatever. Yeah, I did consider it back then. I spoke with like the math faculty. I think I never spoke with like anyone in engineering. But I spoke with math faculty to see how it would work if I wanted to switch over into CS. I think it was probably like second term of second year. And it required me to basically take a bunch more courses. And I would be like pretty much back in first year. And I don't know why that put me off back at the time, but it did. And so it kind of just dragged out, and eventually it was just like, it just gets too late, then it becomes too big of a sunk cost to swallow,
It seems like there was that 2-year sunk cost and you were thinking, that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
And then
it just got worse.
Yeah, it just got worse and worse.
Yeah.
But it seems like, I guess that's how you're really serious about it, because the sunk cost became like 5.5 years, and then you decide, okay, I think I have to make the jump.
Yeah, but I guess one of the things to point out is now that I passed the CFE and got all my hours, got the designation, I no longer consider it a sunk cost. I consider the entire process as something I've gained. It's a good thing. It's things I can learn. I've met a lot of people along the way. I still keep in touch with some of them, and like the experience is valuable. And one of the things that my current supervisor at my current workplace said to me was that it wasn't something I expected at all, but he complimented me about one of like my traits, and I can attribute that trait to have been developed through my experiences in accounting. So I definitely think that I've gained a lot out of the experience, and I definitely wouldn't call it a sunk cost anymore. So
I really like that. I really like the perspective. And I think it's actually something that isn't considered much in the aspect of, I found that people are always in a rush. And I think when you're young, you're definitely in a rush. I was always in a rush. But I think even now, like I'm in my, I want to say mid-20s, but I think it's closer to late 20s now. Yeah, probably late. Now. Yeah, my late 20s. And I feel like I'm getting a little more patient about it. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Where my dad always had a saying. He said, "There's no such thing as wasted time, because you always like learn something from it. You're always doing something, and it adds character, it adds experience." And I think that's a very great way of actually rethinking about that sunk cost idea too. And so from that perspective, like you finally get to the point you want to apply to a boot camp. Why did you choose to do a boot camp? Because there's so many resources out there for people who want to be software developers. People teach code to themselves all the time. Why didn't you take the self-taught route?
So the self-taught route was probably not an option for me, because first of all, the question is whether or not I stay full-time working as an accountant or not while I do the self-taught route as well, right? So quitting my job to self-teach myself coding was definitely out of the question. Parents would not fly with that. Staying with my job at the time and self-teaching, also not plausible because of busy season. I probably could have tried to get myself an industry job, and then also self-teach myself, but I don't think I have enough discipline to do that and land myself a full-time job, because I'm going to be in a comfy position in industry, working away, and then I'm self-teaching myself. I just like after hours, like after 5 p.m. I guess that's just a problem with my own kind of like discipline, that at the time I didn't think I could do it, and so I wanted to set myself up for success and put myself in an environment, in a position where other people are trying to go through the same thing as me, and I think that kind of increased my chances of success a lot more than self-teaching, for sure. I know it's kind of like it sounds contradictory that, if I'm so interested in making the switch over, why couldn't I have self-taught myself? But I think that just comes down to just wanting to put myself into a good environment. And that's one of the benefits of being in a boot camp, I find. Maybe not for most people, but for me, definitely, is that you meet a lot of people. And these people are all trying to achieve the same thing, and they all come from various different backgrounds, and you get to go through an entire experience with all these different peoples, and you learn a lot more than you would self-taught. In addition to, obviously, like the instructors who know what they're doing, and kind of put you in the right path to be able to continuously learn. So that's, I kind of chose the bootcamp part over the self-taught for those reasons.
Yeah, and I think from what you're telling me, it's you hinted at I think the common stereotype, if you love it so much, then discipline shouldn't be a matter. But that's not true at all. Like, I think I constantly tell people I love what I'm doing right now. I'm having so much fun, but every morning's a grind to get out of bed early and sit down and do the work. And I think the environment, it's super important, right? I think we as people are the product of our environment, and the place you pick to be will actually help form who you become, because we're so easily influenced by our surroundings.
Agreed.
And I just want to elaborate a little on maybe kind of the industry jargon that you kind of used, or the assumptions we made, because the busy season for accountants, to give perspective for people who are not accountants, because you'd be surprised, I actually met people in tech, this kind of Toronto tech ecosystem, who thought people who worked in accounting worked 9 to 5. And one Brit, she said, "Oh, you have no idea. oh, you're probably not used to working hard because you're from accounting, because you probably did a 9 to 5 job, but in tech we work till like 8 and stuff. And I was thinking in the back of my mind, you have no idea how much accountants work. So my experience with busy season, I think like on average, like I worked about 100 hours a week. My peak was around 120 hours. I'm gonna guess like you were probably on a similar range for your...
I think for you that was kind of on the high end.
Yeah.
Well, let's just leave it at that. No, during busy season you don't see the light of day.
Yeah, literally. 'Cause it's in the winter.
Yeah, because it's in the winter. Yeah, so you get in like normal time, because that's when the client is at work, and then you probably stay an extra 7 to 8 more hours after the client leaves, and then you also have to work weekends, right? So it's a lot for maybe for some people it's even 3 to 6 months. So it really depends on who, like which clients you get.
It's true.
Yeah, it's
Easy 80 hours a week, right?
Yeah, easy 80. Yeah.
Easy 80.
Yeah.
And the term industry, I'm going to do air quotes for industry. When it's also common jargon when you're in the Big Four, in audit especially, you use the term industry, like saying, oh, so-and-so person left to industry, when the person is no longer an auditor, like when you're no longer in professional services. So
in public accounting,
exactly,
basically.
in public accounting.
Yeah, you don't. That means you don't do taxes. That means you don't do auditing. That means you don't do consulting.
Yeah.
So you basically work under just one company and you do in-house stuff.
Practically,
like
like what 80% of the people out there really do.
Which is why it's fair for some people to assume like, oh, like you only work 9 to 5,
right?
You're an accountant, but it's like. I think I get more stereotypes where people like they hear that I'm an accountant and then they're like, oh, can you do my taxes? No, not everyone does. Not all accountants do taxes, you know.
I don't think most auditors do their own taxes. I think we all have people that do it for us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I started off in tax, so that's so I'm okay in that regard.
Right.
But
right.
Yeah.
And so like if you say you exit to industry, then that would have meant going to a bank, doing some kind of financial reporting controller role, 9 to 5. That's a deal right there. And so in terms of the boot camp, you had the ultimatum. So it seems like you're very specific on the kind of boot camp that you wanted to join, and you ended up going to the one that you wanted to. But what were the differentiating factors out of all the boot camps? Like what were you looking for?
So the big thing I really was looking for was the environment. So out of all the boot camps that I reached out to, excuse me, of all the boot camps I reached out to, the one that I got accepted to was like the one I really wanted, because it was known for their culture, known for their environment, and known for their reputation. Not only does that mean you meet really great people, and like everyone's like pretty awesome, like the instructors are awesome, the staff are really awesome. But because they also have a reputation for being so great, then employers also reach out to the boot camp and look for the new grads for like to offer up any opportunities. So at the time, I thought that was the way to go. I probably would have done it the same if I did more research. I did consider I did consider also going to boot camps in the States as well at one point.
Right, so you went to the one in Toronto.
Yeah, but I went to the one in Toronto instead, just for financial and personal reasons. But there's many things to consider when you're trying to pick out a boot camp. I've seen really great quality graduates as well coming out of other boot camps. Some of the other boot camps are a lot more tougher, and not everyone actually gets through them, and sometimes they drop out. Whereas the boot camp that I went to, like the graduation and employment rate is pretty high. It's actually like very, very high.
What's the percentage? Do you know?
I don't know what it is anymore. When they were marketing it, it was close to 100% employment.
100% employment, 100% graduation?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Don't quote me on that, but but I'm pretty sure that's what it was, and that's what I was pretty sold on. So
guaranteed success.
in a way, yeah. So you see that, you hope it's not a marketing scheme, and then you get in, you realize, hey, it's actually pretty good. And I mean, I'm pretty sure 98 or 99% of my cohort is employed. So it lives up to the hype, I would say.
You hesitated for a second though when you were thinking, oh yeah, if I had to do it over again, I'd probably go to the same boot camp. But why did you hesitate? Or what made you hesitate?
So I met people after I graduated from other boot camps, talked to them, and there was a point when I compared myself against them in terms of like what we've learned and the quality of our work. Obviously it's difficult to compare because I'm a fresh grad and those other people are like several years down the line. They're quite the characters, so the comparison kind of put me off almost. Like I'm trying to abstract what I'm trying to say as much as possible because I don't want to like go too far into details about it, but it just felt like there was a huge disparity between the quality of graduates.
So in terms of that, are you implying that the quality of your bootcamp was way better than
other way around?
Oh, really?
Yes.
So when you say characters, are you saying like when you say characters, like I'm thinking, oh, so is he saying that these people are like extremely just kind of arrogant and very full of themselves, or?
You can kind of put it that way.
Okay, my words.
Yeah.
Yes, my words, not yours.
Yeah, you can kind of put it that way. I wouldn't say they're arrogant, but they do come off as blunt. But it is what it is.
Yeah. Okay. And so then you meet them, and then that kind of made you think, maybe other boot camps might have helped you more on the technical aspect.
I agree. But at the same time, you think back to, or at least I think back to what my purpose was and what my criteria were when I was looking to decide what bootcamp I was going to, and it was the environment, not the technicals. Because what really matters and throughout the process is not learning what the technicals are specifically, because in this industry, the technology will always change. Like it's constantly changing. Just as how people in accounting are, like in public accounting it's a revolving door and people come in, come out. Technology does the same thing in the software development industry. So what's important is to learn how to learn, not what to learn, because what you learn at that point in time may be relevant, but 5-10 years down the road, it's going to be something completely different. And so that's why I think the environment where you learn that teaches you that skill is more important than the quality of your work. Now, that's not to say that the other boot camps probably like don't teach the right mindset and stuff like that, but because I haven't been through it, so I can't say so. So me thinking and like comparing myself with some of the people I've met, maybe wasn't the right thing to do at the time. But sometimes it's hard to not to do that. So.
It's life, right? It's hard. As much as we don't like to compare ourselves to other people, I find that also the kind of environment we could put in leads to that. I was actually having a conversation today with a friend, and it went to the idea of when you're in at least when you're in Toronto, I find, and you're just walking down Bay Street, and at least for me, because it's kind of like home turf to one extent. My career was built on Bay Street. It's hard to not compare yourself to all these other people walking by you when you're in a coffee shop, and I'm wearing a t-shirt on my laptop, and then everyone else is in some kind of 3-piece suit that I used to wear. I used to be in that seat, that position, talking about that kind of P&L net, I don't know, NAV shit that I don't talk about anymore.
Yes.
But yeah, and then you start comparing. I think it's very normal.
Yeah, but I'd like to think of it from the perspective that if you're in a t-shirt and shorts on Bay Street, you might have made it already.
Oh,
but,
thanks man. See, that's what I was going for. I wanted to look as much of a slob or kind of tech billionaire as possible when I went to the coffee shop, so everyone would stare.
Yes.
You know, who's that short Asian kid over there wearing shorts?
And not worrying about your P&L BS stuff, at 10 in the morning.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so we talked about one particular thing, like the technicals, that made you think, made you look back on your experience at a boot camp. I'm wondering, what else was there? What other things really stuck out as, you had all these expectations of the environment, the kind of cohort that you'd be joining, the experience, and then you'd go through it. It was 3 months ish?
It was 9 weeks. Yeah,
9 weeks. Okay,
yeah, like 2 months plus.
2 months plus. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you go through the 9-week program, and then you come out of it. What was the kind of the reality versus the dream / assumption?
So
what surprised you there?
So the dream part was like, I'm gonna be like killing myself over like learning as much as possible over the course of the boot camp, trying to cram as much as I can into my head. And I thought like, oh, there's gonna be so much information. It's literally like a fire hose down your throat kind of ordeal, and that I would come out and I'd be like super ready to land a job. Well, obviously not to the same point as someone who graduated 4 years or 5 years from like a software engineering or a CS degree from university, but like I'd be ready to take on like a beginner position and stuff like that. But the reality was, I found anyway, this might just be because I have a little bit of programming background from like all the electives I took in undergrad, that I kind of was able to learn the stuff a lot faster than I expected. Like I thought I would be like struggling to keep up with all that information and all that kind of stuff to learn, but I actually picked up on it pretty well. And I'm actually happy that I did, because I'm sure there are some people who go through boot camp and it's definitely more of a struggle than others. And I found that to be the same thing, like in our cohort. Like some people got it really fast, even like I wasn't the fastest, that's for sure. And then some people took a bit longer. So the boot camp, how they set it up was like they would set up when it got to the more difficult topics, they would split the class up into two, so that it becomes more manageable for the instructors to go over the more difficult topics. So I guess like in terms of pacing, that's what kind of caught me off guard. I mean, it's a good thing. Like it became manageable. I didn't overstress myself. Like my face didn't break out and stuff like that. But I don't think I really it's the job seeking part that was a bit more difficult and definitely didn't hit my expectation. One of the parts that one of the categories or kind of criteria that I was looking for when researching through the different boot camps was how well structured their postgraduate processes are, because there's no point going through paying all that money to go through a boot camp if you're just gonna get dumped in the deep end afterwards and be like, oh look, like we have all this reputation on our boot camp, and then here, go look for a job. So I guess when I went through my boot camp, got to the job seeking stage, granted I'll admit that I didn't make the most use out of it as I could have and should have.
Can you elaborate on that?
So after the bootcamp is over, we have a very structured and rigid process through job searching. It's a huge numbers game, and because it's a numbers game, you follow through with the process to guarantee your success.
Oh, so the bootcamp lays out this process for you.
Exactly. So so you want to follow that, and because it's a numbers game, it's just probability, chance, and luck and stuff. So you want to maximize your chances of success, and that is just sheer volume of applications. And so
you just throw. It's kind of like you're throwing shit on the wall and seeing what sticks.
you wouldn't say what. Yeah, that is how the saying goes, but it's not really shit.
Pardon my French.
Yeah, no, but it's true, because if you think about it, if you step back and think about it, you're a bootcamp graduate that just did 9 to 12 weeks of intense learning, and you're going up against people who either have experience or they're coming out of a university degree. So in any case, you're probably going to be in a lose-lose situation.
And they tell you that in the bootcamp?
No, this is my perspective only. let's not attach that to the bootcamp, but yeah, like my perspective is that you're at a disadvantage when you're going up against competition in terms of getting that job that you want. And you just have to be comfortable with rejection, because you're not going to be, you may be like the star of your bootcamp, but not only are you competing against people of higher caliber, you're also competing against the many different bootcamps in Toronto as well. So it's a difficult time, and I got dejected from the rejections, and that reduced my discipline in following the routine. I didn't trust the process. You need to trust the process in order to succeed. So, I mean, it still worked out for me in the end, luckily. But yeah, that's kind of one of the disparities I had between the whole the reality versus dream kind of boot camp in my mind.
And the process, I'd like to learn a little more about that. Can you give me an understanding? You can even give me like a range. You don't have to give me the precise number of how many like applications you'd be submitting in a week, or you were supposed to.
I don't think I can go too much into the details of the entire process, but it's kind of like I would say you would apply to maybe like 50 every 2 weeks. So like, I don't know, like 25, something like that. Some people do a lot more.
Mm-hmm. So kind of like closer to 2 a days, like nearly 2 a day.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the CV study, where you only work 9 to 5, but you're full time applying to jobs, and then afterwards you stop. You take your mind off of it, you rest, and then you continue again the next working day. So it's more than 2 a day, that's for sure. But the idea is you just need to set yourself up into a system that just pumps out applications, so that you can maximize your chances of landing an interview and then getting a job. Some people do a lot more applications and get more interviews that way. Some people do a lot more applications, don't get as many interviews, and then they do a few and then they get a lot more. It's luck. And the best thing you can do is keep your mind in a good place. Take care of yourself. That's probably the most important thing, because once you get dejected, it becomes a vicious cycle, and then even if you get interviews, it doesn't bode well on your face, So, yeah.
And when you apply for software jobs, is it like applying for business jobs where you have resume, cover letter, and you spend a lot of time on the cover letter part trying to tailor it, make it personable?
I can't say it's like that for all disciplines of software engineering. I work or I kind of did my boot camp in front end. So it's like front end web development. So we have portfolios where it's just a portfolio website with your different works that you did and stuff like that. I don't typically know too much about any other disciplines, so it makes sense, because if you're going to be a front-end developer, you should know your UI. You need to be able to display stuff to the client, the web browser. So that in that sense, it makes sense. We do also have like resumes and cover letters. They're kind of tailored in a design kind of way, but it's not actually too necessary. I've found anyway, from just talking to people and stuff. Anyway, but it also depends on like where you're applying to too, right? And what kind of job position it is. The place I'm in right now definitely probably doesn't didn't really look at the portfolio website, partly because the stuff I do is, it's not limited to just like web design and like front end stuff. But if you were to work in, like, if you were to apply to a startup and the position is most definitely trying to get you to do purely front end stuff, then that is probably things that they'll look for. So I guess the point is, it depends on what you're applying to, who you're applying to.
Yeah, because I just have some other product design friends who kind of imply that when they have portfolios, that you just kind of submit the portfolio, and they made it seem like it's such an easy process, but it made me think, there's gotta be something more you gotta do, to make it somewhat customizable.
Well, I've seen some portfolios of designers before, and they're not just websites, right? Like they have so they might have, I don't know what other things. I've seen like printed booklets and stuff, and like actual, like, I don't even know what they're called. They look like a binder. They're rigid, but it's like printed on hard paper, and it looks really cool. It's not like a binder with D-rings or whatever. It's literally just pages printed in and inserted into a piece of wood that looks like a binder. And so it's really cool, the things that they do.
Wow, so then to bring that actual physical portfolio to a company.
I think so, yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, like,
that's awesome.
Well, you have to make yourself stand out, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. So like, sorry to interrupt, but like when I was applying for investing jobs, because I had to stand out, I hand delivered resumes, and so that actually worked sometimes.
Yeah. So like in a sea of fish, how are you gonna stand out, right?
Right.
So you try to do anything you can, jump out of the water, or eat something bigger than you. I don't know.
Well, so in that point of the sea of fish, I always see all these news, and when I'm hanging out with some friends and some other like developer friends in the tech ecosystem, they constantly brag about how, there's so many jobs out there, or the news constantly talks about, there's not enough tech talent in Canada and there's way too much jobs. But from what I've seen from friends who are trying to break into the industry, at least for the technical roles, it doesn't seem like there might appear like there's a lot of demand out there, but it seems like it's not that easy. Like most people I've met have had a quite difficult time.
I think that might used to have been the case maybe several years ago, like 2 to 4 to 5 years ago, where the tech industry was lacking in demand, and then you see the uprise of bootcamps in Toronto.
Right, lacking in supply. They had demand.
Sorry, yes, lacking in supply. Yeah, what is economics?
Hashtag no longer business.
Yeah, so now that you kind of reach an equilibrium, right? Where your supply is meeting your demand, and then it's overshooting where you have too much supply and not enough demand, because you fulfilled all the junior roles, and that's the roles that are important for breaking into the industry, right? You don't have enough junior roles because they're all looking for some kind of experience. A lot of the startups don't have the capacity to teach new people. So where does that leave all the new people who are trying to get in, right? So the job seeking process becomes a lot more difficult, because after you've done your boot camp, you probably have to do extended learning, And that's kind of what I've noticed from some of the boot camps as well. They offer extended learning after the boot camp, which expand your knowledge even further and kind of put you in a further ahead position of other juniors looking for a job. It's tough. It's a tough market to be in right now, I think, but who's to say not any like other markets aren't the same, you know?
Yeah, it seems like it's kind of more as if the tech market in Toronto was very inefficient, so to speak, and it's actually getting efficient to the point that if I were to compare it to like the world that we're familiar with in accounting, where a lot of the the bright, ambitious kids in university will go apply for the Big Four or any kind of public accounting practice, learn there because those companies are huge and they have the budget to teach you, and then you leave and try to go into a more senior position into smaller companies or industry companies. It seems like that's kind of the trend.
Yeah, except the only issue with that is like I think that trend does exist with the big tech companies, which aren't necessarily like their campuses aren't tailored towards picking up juniors. In like the Toronto campuses anyway. Sorry, I need to elaborate that. Like I think a lot of software engineers that graduate out of university, they try to aim for like the big companies, you know, like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, or and like those kind of big companies.
All the FANG techs.
Yeah. And then they do several years in there. If they like it, they'll stay. If not, then they'll jump out to a startup or something where they have maybe more control over what they do and things like that. I'm not the most versed in that area, so I won't speak any further in case I end up sounding like a fool. But here, a lot of the jobs I see on boards, like job boards and stuff, they're with like small startups or like medium-sized startups. With some are in like really big companies and stuff like that. So by chance, if a startup does pick you up as like a fresh bootcamp grad or whatever, you're probably going to stay with them for a long time. So that doesn't open up junior level positions the same way that at, let's say, like a public accounting firm, your juniors end up become seniors and they become managers and then they're out the door. So then there's always a flow of traffic through the different positions until you get to industry. It's the same idea as like accounting industry where your controller is maybe like 60 years old and they never move until they retire, right? So the junior positions in Toronto anyway are kind of like that, where you just don't rotate out, you know? It's not in and out the same way it is in like public accounting firms.
Right. So then you're completely reliant on the growth of companies or formation of new companies.
Exactly. And so I think the growth of supply of junior devs clearly is greater than that of, you know, positions. So
and it seems like companies like startups, when they first start, they probably don't want to waste time, or I don't want to say waste time, but they don't want to dedicate the time to teach someone brand new how to do things when they just got funding and the investor's like, okay, build a product, get an MVP, go. You got a year, 2 years left.
Yeah, it really depends on what stage that startup is at. Like if they're seeded and then they have a product that's already out there and they're just kind of like maintaining and or improving on it, then typically they do hire more junior positions with like little to no experience. Other startups, they generally don't even bother looking at you just because like they need people with experience. They need people to deliver, you know? So, yeah.
And so for where you're working right now, would you classify it as small, medium, or large?
Oh, it's very large. It's a very large company. It's not a startup.
Out of your kind of cohort, what's the kind of percentage would you say like people go working in large, medium, and small?
I think a lot of people ended up in medium-sized startups.
Okay.
There's several people, including me, that ended up at large companies. Very small startups, maybe a few as well. So it does vary, but I think most of them land jobs in medium-sized startups.
Like 60%, 50%?
Probably like 60, 70%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think so, yeah.
It's actually like the majority there. Okay.
Yeah. And
how long did it take you to get a job? Like the period of being like rejected and then dejected?
It's as a result of not being able to keep up with my routine. It took me like 4 to 6 months of unemployment. I did have a small little gig with a startup for some time, but that kind of just didn't work out in the end. So then, luckily at the time, my current position was reached out to me and was like, hey, like, I want to interview you again. And I was in the process of interviewing with this company for like several months already, and they had reorganization happening, which is why it took so long. And it just worked out. It just worked out for me very well that the startup that I was working at wasn't really working out, and then I was able to jump over to my current position. Mm-hmm.
And 4 to 6 months, was that on the longer end, or do you find that your cohort?
It was on the longer end for sure.
Yeah.
I would say maybe like 70 to 80% of my cohort was already employed before I got the offer to my current position.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, oh man, I just had a question. I just completely forgot.
It happens.
Yeah, it happens. What was it? Oh yeah. So when you were actually going through that period though of like dejection,
mm-hmm.
like how did you kind of will yourself out of it? What was your process? Like, or what was going on? Let's go first with like what was going on in your mind. Were you thinking of going back to accounting, or like what?
No.
Yeah, okay.
No, that wasn't.
It was an option.
That was not an option for myself. Like I made it that it wasn't an option. There were periods where I was like, should I just just for fun, just apply to some of these accounting industry jobs instead? You know, maybe like that would be better. But I kind of stopped myself from doing that. I think this is where the environment and people kind of thing that I picked the bootcamp for really played a huge part in, because I wasn't the only one still stuck. So out of the people that were still looking for jobs, we were talking every day. We're encouraging each other. We would plan meetups just to get ourselves in an environment where we can just pump out applications and like, you know, and just because you need it. Like after graduation, the next cohort comes, so you no longer get you do get access to the space, but you don't typically just go to the space and just apply to jobs while the other cohort is there. So we try, like, most of us are just applying from home and stuff, and that's not the greatest environment, because it leaves yourself too deep in your own thoughts, and that's when it can get really bad if you're not mentally strong. So you put yourself in an environment with other people, you talk about it, you encourage each other, and I think that really helped. A lot of the people that I talked to, like were just encouraging over maybe 2 to 3 months after a lot of other people got their jobs. I pushed them, they pushed me. Eventually they got jobs, and then I got jobs, and you know, it's a good environment, and that's kind of one thing that I'm very grateful about this bootcamp was for. So
yeah, it seems to have paid off.
Yeah.
And now you're doing. You said you're doing more than just front end work. So
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing a bit of like back end work as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a role. The current position I'm in, it's kind of a role that it's designated as a front end developer, but the nature of the team is so, like, we're trying to move towards where everyone can do anything. So you learn a lot of different things. You learn backend, you learn DevOps, you learn security, you learn QA, and all, like, just to name a few. It's a lot to learn, but it's also really fun, and the people are like, because the team is so new and the company was undergoing this whole reorganization. Everyone's still learning. It's not like we're in a large corporation, you're expecting like, oh, there's going to be this structure, that structure, and like you have to do things this way or that way. There is that kind of stuff here, but because we're all still learning and transitioning to this new kind of tech style, there's give and there's like there's you can go to your senior and suggest something and they'll be like they're open to it, whereas in the traditional way it's kind of like, no, you have to do it this way, you have to use this, you have to use that, or whatever. So I forgot what my point was, but it's a great role. I think I landed in a very good first like junior position, where I'm not stuck only doing one thing and only see one thing, as I would have expected in a large corporation.
And the question I want to lead into with that is just, you've left accounting. It's been about a year now since you've left. You had 2 months and then 6 months of looking, and then now about 5 months.
Yeah, I left accounting beginning of October of last year.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's been just over like a year and several months. So
yeah. Wow. Yeah. And so then, since that time, like, do you ever miss accounting? Do you
No.
ever?
It's funny because I don't miss it, but I still somehow get reminded of it from time to time. Whether it's like keeping track of my personal finances or like some random person meets me, hears that I'm an accountant, and then they ask me if I can do their taxes as a joke. Like it's still a part of me. I'm still a CPA. Some of my friends still ask me like accounting or like financial, like personal finance related questions or like tax questions and stuff, and I'm still able to answer them. And I still am keeping up with my CPD, even though I don't think I'm required to do it because I'm not in a role where I need to, need to do things that affect investors' decisions. I think I'm pretty sure there's an exemption for that for CPD. So I don't know if you're still doing your CPD or not, but you might not need to do it. But
oh wow, all right, I gotta look into that. I did not know about that. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, like I'm still am reminded that I'm a CPA. So I haven't fully left it behind, but in terms of like my position and my every day-to-day tasks, yes, I've left it behind. And I'm very happy that I did.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask, like, what's your life like now? Like, unicorns and rainbows?
No. I wish. No, it's still a lot of meetings, especially so because there's so many constituents involved in a project that during the day is like usually meeting up with, let's say, the business or like an analyst or something, or the UX designer or UI designer, and talking about how something it should be done, or like something needs to be fixed, who to go to fix it and stuff like that, or like which developer is responsible for doing this or that or whatnot. So during the day, it's more meetings. And then after the day end is when development actually starts, which sounds oddly familiar to auditing, where during the day you're talking to the client, getting stuff, and then answering a bunch of questions from your manager and your staff, and then afterwards, after 5 o'clock when the client leaves, is when you can actually get your work done. So, yeah, the difference is that in this current position, I can still leave at 5, but I don't notice that it is 5. So
that's a big difference right there. And I don't know who said it, and this person may have been very ill-informed, but I heard how if accounting and software development might actually be similar in certain aspects. Like I think I saw some psychology study where like, oh, if you rank in like this personality type, like it says like accounting or software developer, and I was thinking, are they similar? I thought they were very different, but I guess they're kind of sedentary in one aspect, like you're sitting down. But I quit at software developing more to like close to like financial modeling or something, where actually planning things out and then building something. Never thought that of it, accounting, but. What's your experience? Are they similar at all, or you don't have to squeeze it? You don't have to say like there's like some element of similar. If you just think straight up, nah, that person's wrong.
It's hard. It's hard to say because the accounting field itself is kind of diverse depending on what role you're in, right?
That's very true.
You can say like, oh, I'm a like a tax director at an industry at like some sort of company. That role might be, it's not the same as if you're like a manager or a senior manager at a public accounting firm, right? Where you're delivering to clients and stuff. So you're like constantly busy. But then in industry, you're more project based and you have funding and stuff like that for like, maybe the tax director thing wasn't the greatest example, but like, let's say you're like a project accountant or like you're on the business end of things, then that's kind of very similar to development, where you're funded for a particular project, and then you build stuff based on like your MVP and like your whatever. So, but then like you can say the same about other like different industries as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's there's similarities, there are differences. It's not as black and white as it may seem. I definitely didn't know, like, or like I didn't expect full-time software development to be the way I imagined it to be.
In terms of how?
Just I thought like, I don't know. It was probably very naive of me to just think like, oh, once I get into soft dev, I'm just gonna be that guy in the corner sitting over there, literally coding, being a code monkey and like coding away for like 8 to 10 plus hours a day, and then just going home and not having much interaction. But that's not how it works anymore. Maybe it was at some point. Maybe it is for some people still, but at least my role is it's just a lot of involvement with different kinds of people in the project, and it feels like I'm a staff again. It feels like I'm a staff accountant again. But at least the things I do actually make a difference. I realize how harsh of a statement that was just now, but it kind of is true. So,
Oof. Yeah. All right. Laying down the gauntlet there.
Depends on what staff you are at which firm.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Save yourself that way. Yeah. All right. Okay.
I know. As when I was a staff, at like in my position, I actually did more than what I would expect as an audit staff. Like a tax staff definitely does a lot, but it's weird because you don't really have tax staff in big firms. I don't know. I actually don't remember if you get really hired into a tax role without some experience. So, yeah. I'll just leave it at that. I should stop talking about that.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave it at that there. And we're kind of ending up to the final legs of this interview, but I had some kind of 2 quick questions. One particularly is, like you said, you entered a junior developer role after having been a senior accountant. So, when you do a complete career switch, people say, oh, you gotta start from the bottom and be okay with that. What was it like? What was your kind of emotional process like, though, starting from the bottom and having to kind of, quote unquote, start over again? Like, I've done it 3 times, and I tell people each time, it sucks.
It sucks.
It sucks. Like, it's, even if I'm in a field that I wanted to be in, it still sucks because they don't, transfer over the years you put into something. And in one aspect, I guess that makes sense. One aspect, you're still kind of upset about it, but I'm curious to hear how you handled it.
It's the transformation sucks. It's but you have to take a look at it as from an investment standpoint, where this is what you want to do, this is what you've been aiming to do, and you've already achieved one milestone, and that is to land the job and break into the industry. So the only downside you'll have for the next little while is just that your friends are making more than you. But other than that, you still retain the same knowledge as in your previous job, that what you gained up until that point. There's going to be things that are transferable. I found that all the soft skills, all the things that all the experiences I've had dealing with like working with clients and working with all sorts of different kind of people, and on my different like audit engagements or like tax engagements, that all is like soft skills are always going to be transferable anywhere you go, and it does play a big part in my current role too. Being able to communicate well will help make the job, like you doing your job, more efficient. So like you just, in your career transformation process, you just need to find the things that are transferable and remind yourself that, hey, what you did before, there's got to be things that make you who you are, and it's got you this far. So it's not like you're dumping everything out the window and bringing in new furniture, but it's, you just have to look at it from a different perspective, basically.
Yeah, and yeah. I think simply put, it's the way of looking at life in the long term. Don't want to be cliche, but truly what it is, which is a long-term race. And if I have the perspective that I'm going to have a 90-year career, and then it doesn't really matter. 2-3 years is just a blip. And
exactly.
What is life? It's an adventure. You're exploring.
Exactly.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
And then for the final question then for today is, I'm sure you have other friends who might have considered this kind of transition after being inspired by your move. Mm-hmm. And given what you've experienced now, like, what's the kind of advice that you give to them? Like some mistakes you have learned or things you learned, you saw. Like, what kind of advice do you give to your friends who are considering the kind of move?
You got to stick it through. Specifically during the job search part, for sure. You shouldn't get dejected from rejections, because you're already expecting them. So why get dejected? Don't let that ruin your routine, because that will just hurt your chances of finding a job at the end. That was one of like my biggest errors during the entire process. And then another mindset to really keep in mind if you're going to enter into this industry, is you need to also, like, after you've found your job, you need to find time outside of work hours to still do your own learning. I'm kind of lucky in that in this role, they're like at my company, they encourage us to at least learn some new stuff, like for like at least an hour a week as part of like our work hours. So that's really good, because I know it's difficult for different people at different walks of like their life to be able to find time to do self-learning. But in order to continue to progress in this industry, because it's not just about breaking into the industry, you still have to stay in and stay relevant. So you still need to continuously learn. And that's one thing that's kind of different from accounting, in that accounting, it's like once you've learned the fundamental principles and stuff like that, it's easy to update yourself, because then it's like you have the set already, and then you just kind of add on or replace different parts of it depending on what gets passed through the budget. And then but in development, like if your technology just suddenly starts to become irrelevant, then you have to learn something new, right? So better to get practice learning now than to do it when you have to. And I mean, it's a mindset you should always have with anything in life anyway, but it is what it is. Sometimes you get comfy and then you slow down on your learning, but it's something to remember, I think. And I need to work towards that myself. So
awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Vince. Really had fun today with this chat, and thanks so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story with myself and my audience.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care. All right. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I hope the story was inspiring to you. Hopefully it also helped you expand your perspectives. Hopefully it also made you question the default path that you might have been going on, or the default beliefs you might have had. And maybe now it'll make you even think about doing something about it, doing something different, maybe challenging yourself, being courageous. Who knows? But regardless, I'm really happy that you took some time out of your day to listen to this fantastic story with my guest. And if you would like to somehow, in some way, contribute and help support the podcast, and maybe even just be part of the community that I'm trying to build with the greater OMD Ventures platform, really think about being a stakeholder in the platform. And the quick way to do that is to go to my website, oldmandan.com, and go to the stakeholders page. I believe it's oldmandan.com/stakeholder. And the link is also down below. And that's how you can figure out how you can subscribe, follow to get more updates on the free content, but at the same time also donate, and donate by actually just buying me a coffee. That's just how I put it. And you can buy me a coffee a month, coffee a week, or coffee every day of the year. And think about it as the way that, if you wanted to chat with me, you might just bring me out for coffee and buy me a coffee. Or if you wanted to bring one of my guests out to chat, you might buy them a coffee. So just think of it as I'm the service that's doing that for you, so you can just pay me in coffees. Don't worry, everything will still be free. It would just really help if you would like to show your support this way, so that I can use the coffee money to buy myself actual coffees, and also to buy my guests actual coffees, and use the leftover money to actually grow the platform, as well as even keep it operationally alive as well, because all this isn't really free, and it does take a lot of time to build it as well as operate it and hopefully grow it further. So your support would be amazing if you would like to contribute. And so just check out the website, go to the stakeholders page, and read the different kind of benefits you might even get as a stakeholder. All right, thank you.